The rain had started before dawn, a steady whisper against the glass dome of the Metropolitan Museum's eastern wing. Inside, the galleries slept beneath thin sheets of emergency light. Security guard Daniel Hargrove was doing his third round, boots echoing softly on marble floors that had seen 100 years of footsteps before his. He had worked there for 9 years, but that morning, April 3, 1978, he would later tell investigators that something different hung in the air. He said the air was thicker, like old perfume and burnt film. The temperature dropped as he turned into Gallery 47, the photography section, newly opened, displaying portraits from the early 1900s, donations from private estates across New York. The sign still had fresh paint. He walked slowly past the portraits, faces frozen in sepia tones, men with serious eyes, women with ribboned hair, children holding still for the long exposure. His flashlight beam swept across them one by one. Then he saw it, photo 547. The tag read unknown photographer, circa 1912. Subject unidentified. Donated by the Belmont Estate, Long Island. The image showed a man standing near an iron gate, wearing an old-fashioned black coat and bowler hat. His eyes seemed darker than the photo could justify, smudged, like the print had melted slightly. But that wasn't what froze Daniel. What stopped him cold was that the man's left foot wasn't in the photo. The edge of his shoe was blurred, fading out mid-step, as if he was walking out of the picture. Daniel tilted the frame slightly, thinking the photo had warped under humidity. But the museum's dehumidifiers kept perfect conditions. He leaned closer, so close his breath fogged the glass, and that's when the air changed. He felt a pressure behind his eyes, like static or migraine aura, and a faint sound, like someone whispering through cloth. He stepped back, blinking, and swore he saw movement. Just a flicker, like the man's hand had shifted slightly inside the frame. He rubbed his eyes. The lights above flickered once, twice, then went out completely. The flashlight trembled in his hand. When the emergency lights returned 15 seconds later, Daniel looked again, and the man was gone. Not the frame, not the photo, the man. The gate, the ground, the background were still there. But where the man had stood was now a faint silhouette, like a burned shadow after lightning. Daniel stumbled back, his radio clattering to the floor. He ran to the central security desk. The recording shows his voice shaking. Base, this is Hargrove in East Hall, Gallery 47. Someone tampered with a display. I think the photograph's been altered. By the time the other guards arrived, the photo was normal again. The man was standing in the frame, foot and all, perfectly still. The museum logged it as a false alarm. But the night footage, stored on an old magnetic tape, showed something else. At exactly 3:14 a.m., the hallway camera outside Gallery 47 captured movement. The east door, which was locked from the inside, opened slightly. A faint shape passed by the frame, tall, dark, wearing what looked like a long coat and hat. No alarms, no forced entry. The next day, Daniel didn't come to work. His wife told police he never came home after his shift. His car was still in the parking lot. 2 days later, a janitor found a single shoe print in Gallery 47, wet and dark against the marble floor. Shoe size 10, old-fashioned sole pattern. And near the photo's frame, someone, or something, had pressed a single fingerprint into the glass. When tested, the oil residue came back aged, approximately 70 years old. Over the next week, more guards started reporting things. One said he heard the sound of footsteps behind him when he was alone. Another claimed the man in the photograph had changed expression between his rounds. One said the man's hat had tilted slightly. The head curator ordered the photo temporarily removed and sent to the archives. But when they opened the display case, there was no photograph, only a frame. The glass was cracked from the inside. 3 days later, a missing persons call came from a small art gallery in Brooklyn. The owner reported that a man in an old black coat and bowler hat had come in around closing time, asked for directions to the Metropolitan Museum, then disappeared into the alley. The owner remembered because his skin was cold as paper. Police circulated the sketch. A historian recognized the man's face. It matched a 1912 portrait of a photographer named Edward Mallory, rumored to have gone insane after claiming his photographs stole pieces of the soul. He had vanished in 1914 after being accused of murdering his assistant. The Belmont estate, who donated the photograph, belonged to his last known relatives. The museum tried to bury the story, calling it tabloid nonsense. But strange incidents continued. Visitors claimed to see a reflection move behind them in the glass display. One teenage boy fainted, saying the man's hand had reached out toward him. Then, in late June, the museum's fire alarm triggered at 3:00 a.m. When firefighters arrived, they found Gallery 47 filled with thick black smoke, but nothing was burning. The smell was like photochemicals, fixer fluid, and ash. On the back wall, scrawled in soot, was a message, HSE 9:3 a.m. By the next morning, the museum stood silent under a gray New York sky. Rain had washed away the crowds, and the newspapers ignored what happened that night. Only the internal staff knew the truth. The photograph was missing, and someone had written those words on the wall. He is not in the frame. Detective Lawrence Pike was assigned to the case. A serious man, mid-40s, ex-NYPD with a military posture. He didn't believe in ghosts, didn't believe in haunted museum talk. But the first time he stepped into Gallery 47, something unsettled him. The air felt charged, like after a thunderstorm. He noticed small details the others missed. The faint black residue on the marble floor, the smell of burnt developer fluid, and a hairline crack in the frame's wooden edge. He ordered every photograph in the room to be removed and catalogued. When they reached Photo High 46, another piece from the Belmont estate, they found something that made everyone step back. Behind the frame, taped to the backing paper, was a folded photograph. It was a recent print, Polaroid style, dated April 3, 1978, 3:16 a.m. It showed the east hallway of the museum. And there, just at the corner of the frame, was a blurred human figure, half-transparent, walking toward the exit. The timestamp matched the night Daniel disappeared. Detective Pike felt his throat tighten. The staff said it was impossible. No one had access to that photo. No camera had captured that angle. The Polaroid itself was made on film stock discontinued years before. He took it to the lab anyway. The chemical analysis said the photo was genuine, developed using a process popular in the 1910s. That night, the janitor cleaning the archive reported a power fluctuation around 2:45 a.m. The lights blinked, and he heard something behind the storage racks, a soft click like a camera shutter. When he turned, he swore someone was standing in the darkness near the back wall. "Sir, you're not supposed to be here." The figure didn't move. Just stood there tall, wearing that same bowler hat. When the lights flickered again, the man was gone. But on the floor, the janitor found a small black card, an undeveloped photographic plate. Security logged it as possible prank. The card was sent to Detective Pike. Out of curiosity, he took it to a photo lab. The developer dipped it in solution, and something began to appear, a face. Not just any face, Daniel Hargrove's, the missing guard. His expression frozen in mid-scream. Behind him, in the blurred shadows, the same man in the black coat, his hand gripping Daniel's shoulder. The technician dropped the tray. Pike immediately ordered all museum operations shut down until the investigation was complete. But by then, it was too late. That same night, the museum's night supervisor, Miss Clark, went to double-check the locked east corridor. She reported hearing footsteps again, slow, deliberate, echoing behind her. The same pattern, step, pause, step. She turned, shining her flashlight, and caught sight of a dark stain on the wall, like moisture or old varnish. But when she looked closer, she realized it was forming the shape of a human outline: head, shoulders, coat, hat. The light bulbs above began to hum, one by one, until they burst in sequence down the corridor. She screamed. The footage shows her dropping the flashlight and running. When they recovered her hours later, she was sitting outside the museum, barefoot, holding something in her hands. It was the missing photograph. Only now, it looked different. The man in the frame was smiling, and behind him, faintly visible in the corner of the image, was the reflection of a woman holding a flashlight. Miss Clark herself. She had no memory of how she got it. Detective Pike took the photograph back to his office that night. He laid it under a bright desk lamp, studying every inch. The man's eyes seemed almost wet, like ink refusing to dry. Pike swore they followed him around the room. He opened the museum's old donor records and found the Belmont file. Inside were letters from 1912, correspondence between Edward Mallory and the estate owner, Francis Belmont. One letter stood out. "You must understand, the exposure is not what traps the image. It frees it. The lens opens both ways. One day they'll step through. When they do, the world will forget who took the photograph." The letter was dated 2 weeks before Mallory vanished. That night, Pike had a dream. He stood inside a long hallway lined with glass frames. Every frame showed a different time. Streets, houses, faces. But the man in the black coat was always there, walking further out of each one, step by step, until only one frame remained empty, and Pike realized it was facing him. When he woke, the photograph was on his desk, facing upside down. He didn't remember touching it. By July, the museum reopened with tight security, though whispers spread among the staff that the photographer still walks the halls. One intern said she saw the man reflected in the glass, even when she wasn't looking at the photo. Tourists reported strange anomalies in their Polaroids, faces of people not present, or shadows standing where no one was. Then, on August 12th, Detective Pike disappeared. His office door was found locked from the inside. His typewriter sat mid-sentence. He was walking toward the frame, and beside it, an old photograph of Gallery 47. In the center stood the man in the black coat. Behind him, half visible in the photo's reflection, Detective Pike. Months passed. The east wing of the New York Museum stayed sealed. Its marble doors bolted under the excuse of renovation. But everyone in the staff knew that wing wasn't under repair. It was under quarantine. The hall that once echoed with footsteps now breathed only dust. A thin chain hung across the corridor, and a single yellow card read, "Do not enter. Archive cleaning in progress." Nobody dared question it. One afternoon, a new security guard named Eli Morton was assigned to the wing. He was told the rumors were nonsense, just old stories from the night crew. Still, when he walked in, the air felt thicker, like breath held too long. He noticed the photograph immediately. It still hung there, slightly crooked, frame cracked. The nameplate below read, "Portrait of an unknown gentleman. Artist unverified, 1912, the same image." A man in a gray suit standing beside a velvet curtain. His eyes still followed you across the room. Only now, there was something new. A faint outline behind him, almost human, almost moving. That night, Eli sat in the monitoring room, flipping through the CCTV feeds. At 20:14 a.m., the camera in Hall 47 flickered, then froze. The photograph was empty. He stared, unblinking, waiting for the frame to return. But when it did, the man was back inside, only now, his head was turned toward the camera. Eli replayed the footage twice, 3 times. Each time, the man's position changed. First, he faced sideways, then slightly forward, then directly into the lens. By 3:00 a.m., Eli left his post and walked toward the east wing. The museum corridors stretched endlessly, echoing the low hum of the air vents. When he reached Gallery 47, the photograph hung perfectly still. But someone had wiped the dust off the glass. A single, clean handprint right where the man's face had been. "Hello," Eli whispered. The light flickered. Once. Twice. Then the frame rattled gently against the wall. He took a step back, and in that sliver of a second, the reflection in the glass blinked. But Eli hadn't. By morning, the guards found the hall empty. Eli's radio lay on the floor, still whispering static. The photo had changed again. Now 2 figures stood inside. Weeks turned into months. The museum quietly reopened the east wing. Visitors wandered past the photograph without knowing its history, Until one spring morning in 2013, a tourist named Melissa Grant uploaded a photo to her travel blog, Creepy Things in NYC Museums. In her picture, she stood smiling in front of the unknown gentleman portrait. Nothing strange at first glance, but when you zoom in just behind her left shoulder, there's a faint silhouette. A man in gray, eyes open. Melissa never noticed, but people online did. Comments filled her blog. Is that someone behind you? Look closer. His reflection's in the glass. I think he's looking at you. Within days, the post vanished. Her account was deleted, but the image still circulates on old Reddit threads and paranormal boards. Always reposted, always removed within hours. The museum denies any connection, yet the internal records show a quiet memo dated June 2013. Recommend removal of Exhibit F47 due to repeated guest complaints about visual distortions in glass. Pending storage transfer to Sub-Basement 3. No transfer record was ever filed. In 2017, a janitor named Luis Ortega claimed he saw the portrait again, not in the museum, but in a private collector's townhouse in Queens. He said the collector had purchased a cursed photograph from a closed exhibit. Luis quit the next morning and never spoke about it again. But every few years, the photo resurfaces, sometimes in auctions, sometimes in antique stores, always mislabeled, always unverified. People who own it report the same thing. At first, the man looks ordinary. Then, over time, his posture shifts. His head tilts, his eyes grow darker, and sooner or later the new owner disappears. Last year, an art restoration student at Columbia University was cataloging forgotten museum archives. In one unmarked folder, she found an old note written on thin museum stationery. If he looks at you, burn the negative. If you hear his voice, leave the room. Do not under any circumstance let him out again. The note was signed, faintly D. Hargrove, Night Security. 1978. The name means nothing to most people. But to those who remember the case, Daniel Hargrove was the first man who reported seeing someone walk out of that photograph. The museum stands silent tonight. Hall 47 remains sealed again, its walls freshly painted white. Only a faint rectangle marks where the frame once hung. But under the new paint, if you run your fingers along the surface, you'll feel an outline, like glass. And if you stare too long, you might see a shadow move inside the reflection, someone turning slowly toward you. So next time you visit a museum, and you pause before